So we are moving on to chapter 10 in our book, and this is going to talk about our last world religion, which is Islam. So far we've already covered Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, and Hinduism. So Islam is the fifth and youngest out of all five of those, and the population the number of people who participate in this is actually exploding throughout the world. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of this. So for starters, I'm going to give you a little bit of a timeline here. We know that Muhammad, who is the founder of this religion, was a real person, actually walked the earth in 570 AD. So this, like I said, is the youngest of all these religions because it's the only one that's formed in AD. So this is after we start counting upwards, right, on the timeline. So he is born in the city of Mecca, and I want to show you guys real quick this map. So Mecca is a city that is on the Arabian Peninsula right here. Today this is Saudi Arabia and a couple other countries, Yemen's one. And so Mecca is located right here. We are also going to talk about the city of Medina, which is located a little bit north of it. But this is an important trading town. So if you remember, we talked about how the Muslims were the educators of the region. They are also really big into trading. So we're going to see that they are actually going to have a lot of commerce that's going to come through Mecca right here. So that's where Muhammad is actually born. So 610. 40 years later, Muhammad is actually doing some meditating. So he lives in an area that is polytheistic, and they work a lot of meditation into their religion with those many gods. And so he is actually up in a cave outside of the city. I guess he liked to go there. It's very quiet. It was nice for him for his meditation and inner thoughts. And so while he's there, he has a vision of the archangel Gabriel. So Gabriel is an angel that shows up in Christianity as well. And his vision of this angel tells him that he is supposed to be a messenger of God. He tells him that you are supposed to create a brand new religion that is monotheistic, belief in only one God, and it is going to be called Islam. So Islam translates to mean submit to God, and it's 610 AD, this is where this religion is actually started. Now, this is not going to go easy for him. So for starters, he's got to go home and tell his wife that he just had a vision of an angel. I feel like anytime this has ever happened in history, people are kind of like, yeah, what? Okay, are you sure? But his wife is like, this is amazing. And she becomes his very first convert or person who changes religions. So they are the very first Muslims. So as he starts to try to spread this religion, which is what the archangel told him he's supposed to do, around Mecca, the people are not super excited about this. So basically, they tell him that there is many gods, not just one, and the more that he keeps walking around telling people that there is only one God, the angrier the many gods are going to get. So he actually gets death threats, like a lot, so much so, he's actually going to get forced out of Mecca. So the town he is born in, lived his entire 40-year life, he's going to get shoved right out of it because people think he's nuts. So that's really unfortunate. In 622, he and his followers are going to leave for the city of Medina, which I showed you on the map. It's just north of Mecca. They call this journey the Hijra. So that's located right here. That's what the name of this journey, that movement from Mecca into Medina is. The reason they left, I mentioned, is because of the death threats in Mecca. That's really crazy. Those merchants particularly that were in Mecca were particularly strong in their will that there was many gods, and that if Muhammad continued talking like this, then those gods were going to get mad and mess up their trade, and like maybe their ships would get, destroyed at sea or something. So they were really the ones who shoved him out and forced him to go to Medina. But the good news for him is once he gets to Medina, he is going to be able to really spread this new religion, and he gets a whole lot of followers while he is there. So in 630, he is going to return to Mecca. It's a triumphant return for him, because when they get there, he is actually going to go into the Kaaba, which is a building there. I'm going to show you guys a picture in just a second. The Kaaba was used to worship these many gods, and so located inside, they had something called idols. So idols are objects that people worship. It's not a symbol of God or an angel, or they're actually worshiping that object. And so most modern religions, I know Christianity says that you should not worship idols at all. And so it's different than having a cross hanging on the wall at church, because you aren't actually worshiping that cross. If you go to church, you are worshiping the symbol. That's the symbol of what you're actually worshiping in God. So he comes into the Kaaba, he and his followers destroy all of the idols that are inside. And it's this sort of forceful, like, you will listen to us because there's only one God. So they destroy all those things, all those statues that were being worshipped. And he takes the Kaaba and rededicates it to Allah. So Allah is the Arabic word for God. So he says, this shall now be a symbol, a place where we come worship Allah, or God, and no longer will many idols or many gods be worshipped here. So that's pretty triumphant for him when you consider he got run out of this town with death threats. So there's that going for him. 2 years after he comes back to Mecca, he is actually going to die. So he has lived a pretty good life, pretty long, and he does manage to get this religion going. And so he was able to see that through before he died. So that's definitely a big deal for him. So let's talk a little bit about, there's our map again, just so you remember. Arabian Peninsula, they've got the Red Sea here, so sailing out, they would take things from Mecca, hop on a boat in the sea, and be able to sail this direction. I do want to point out to you guys that today, right here between, this is where Egypt is, that's where the Nile is, there's actually a canal, so a man-made waterway that runs right through here. It's called the Suez Canal, and that allows shipping to go from the Mediterranean here down into the Red Sea and back and forth. That didn't exist back then, so if you wanted to be able to trade in the Mediterranean, you would literally have to undo everything from your boat here, get it across here on land, and then end up here in the Mediterranean, get on another boat. So it's very, very time consuming. That canal is definitely going to save problems later on. So let's learn a little bit about what the beliefs are, so that maybe we can help to understand some of the conflicts that go on with this religion. So first of all, they study from a book called the Quran. So we've already talked about holy books in the other main religions we've talked about. So the Torah is the holy book for Judaism. The Bible is the holy book in Christianity. Hinduism has got so many, I don't even know exactly, but they call those the Vedas. And then Buddhism doesn't actually have one holy book either. They have got several that sort of filter in and out during different times in the religion. So this is called the Quran. I'm going to point out to you guys, sometimes you see Quran spelled Koran, and that's because when you see Arabic writing, it uses calligraphy or characters. So it doesn't use letters the way that ours does. There's not a direct translation in terms of spelling for a lot of the words. So sometimes you will see this spelled, sometimes it's even spelled with a Q and an apostrophe in it. It's the same word. It's the name for their holy book, and it is written in Arabic. You are supposed to learn Arabic if you become a convert to Islam, so that you can actually read the holy book, similar to how the Bible used to be written only in Latin. So it kind of goes back to that original teachings of the Quran. The next thing in Islam is something called Sharia law. So Sharia is basically where they are using the laws of the religion to influence the laws in everyday life. In theory, we try not to do this in our country because we have got what we call the separation of state, church and state. Um, the churches are not supposed to influence government and sort of vice versa. So that doesn't happen as much in these Arabic countries because they do use the Sharia law. And um, basically, when it comes to Sharia, there are some places who interpret it very strict, and then there are other places who don't interpret it strictly at all. The places where Sharia law is interpreted in a very strict manner, they've got very severe punishments. We hear stories about people getting their hands chopped off in modern day, not like back in ancient times, like we've been talking, like today in modern day. Um, they use methods of execution like stoning, where they bury you from your chest down, so just your chest up is sticking out, and they literally throw rocks at you until you die. So in those super extreme countries, we see that law coming out of their religious teachings, and then it gets interpreted into this very extreme manner. The majority of Arabic countries do not follow that, but they do use the religious teachings to influence their laws. So that does definitely go into it a little. One of the main things that they have are called the 5 pillars of Islam. So if you imagine the pillars that hold up a building, the front of the buildings like we've looked at, those stone columns, that's sort of what this is all about. These are the 5 main things that all Muslims must follow. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the 10 Commandments. So these are the 5 important things that all Muslims must do. So for starters, you declare your faith. You basically say, I am a Muslim and I am going to do these things. I'm going to follow these expectations. So that first expectation is daily prayer. You pray 5 times a day. They are at set times. And so basically everybody is doing them at the same time. You also always face towards Mecca. So whichever direction that would be, if we're in Michigan, we would be facing southeast is the direction, because you always want to aim at that or face the Mecca, which is their sacred city. So this is a picture of a mosque. This is a holy building. So church for Christianity, synagogues are for Judaism. This is a mosque. And the architecture here is very indicative, or it indicates what, the different architecture is for mosques. They're typically very similar to this wherever you are in the world. So they've got sort of this pointed arch, which we've already discussed, which we've seen in Gothic architecture, particularly in the giant churches in England and other European countries. You can see the sheer size, right? This is a very, very large mosque. You can see how high up, even just based on the doors and where they're located. These minarets are also very important. So these are these towers that come up on the sides. The minarets are used for calling out the daily prayer. So there will actually be somebody who goes up into these towers in the cities, because everything in these cities where there are a large Muslim population, everything stops. The stores stop. The fast food restaurants stop. Everything stops. And everybody does their prayers at the same time. Well, here they would have somebody who would actually climb up into the towers. Today they would have microphones and, their speakers around the city. But in ancient times, when this first starts, it's just a guy up here using his best voice to scream out the prayers so that people in the city can hear and follow along. Also important is we've got the dome right here. Domed roofs are very common in these mosques. And at the very top here, you can see this crescent moon a little bit. The crescent moon is a symbol of Islam, like you might see the Star of David for Judaism or a cross for Christianity. You will most often see this crescent moon shape for Islam. So daily prayer is the second of the pillars, 5 times a day. Third is charity. You are expected to give money to charity throughout your life. Again, very similar to other religions. Christianity generally has a collection plate at different services that you give money to donate to the church for whatever causes they're using that for. Fourth is to fast during the holy month of Ramadan. So you are not going to fast for an entire month because that would be a lot. But you do fast from sun up until sundown. So you basically are going the whole day without eating. And it was explained to me one time that part of the reason that they do this is because you are trying to remind yourself that there are people in the world who are hungry and going hungry. And so it's sort of a help you to appreciate it a little bit better. If you are young, very young, or old or sick, you are not required to take part in the fasting. And it lasts for 1 month, like I said, sun up to sundown. And then you definitely are not smashing on food when sun goes down either. Like you're still sort of in that holy idea. And so you're going to have light meal when the sun actually goes down. And the last of the pillars of Islam is going to be the Hajj. So the Hajj is a word for your journey or pilgrimage to the Holy Land at Mecca. So Mecca obviously is where Muhammad was born. That's why it's a very holy city to them. And so if you are financially and physically able, you are expected to at least one time in your lifetime make that pilgrimage or holy journey and go to Mecca. So once you get to Mecca, this is what you find. So this is the Kaaba, which I mentioned to you guys earlier. You can get in, the average person does not go inside, but there are holy relics being stored inside of here. And you can see in this gigantic area around it, look, there's people all the way up here. There's people on this balcony. There's people behind here on the first level. It's big. It is big, big. Millions of people travel to Mecca every single year to do this holy pilgrimage. Once you arrive in Mecca, you actually, when you get here, you dress in white. Almost everybody dresses in white, so you can sort of see that in this picture. The idea behind that is that everybody is equal before God, and so everybody should be dressed equal so that nobody there looks rich or looks poor because everybody's the same. You can see minarets back here in the back. Again, those towers where people would call out the prayer. Once you get here, you walk around the Kaaba building 5 times. That's key. Five trips around it. This picture actually shows that movement. I love this picture so much because it is it's been, the shutter on the camera is left open, so it's longer exposure, a time exposure, so that you can see movement. So it's really cool because you can see that the people on the outskirts, the edges, are standing still, but here they're moving, and it's just a really, really cool picture. So you move around the building 5 times, and there are certain prayers that you say as you are there during this whole journey. So we've also got, I want to show you some pictures of this mosque on the inside. What we've got is some pretty serious artwork going on here. So the mosque is a place of worship for them. And an interesting fact is that they don't ever use people or animals in their religious art. And part of that goes all the way back to Muhammad and getting rid of those idols. They want to make sure that nobody is mistakenly actually worshiping that idol or that image instead of God or the symbol behind it. So instead they use geometric art to decorate. They use calligraphy, which is fancy writing. Mosaics, where they take those small pieces of colored glass and arrange them together. And that's really what you are seeing here. They've used some tile up here, some different colored tile to make these geometric designs. It is very labor intensive, it is very beautiful, and it must have taken forever to actually get done. So inside of the mosque, this is a domed roof. I meant to tell you that too. So this is the inside of the dome that we would have seen on the outside of the previous slides. So the domed roof right here, this is what it looks like on the inside. This is Dome of the Rock. This is a very, very famous mosque. This is located inside of the city of Jerusalem. So if you remember to our crusades, we talked about how the city of Jerusalem is holy, not only to Christians, but also Muslims and also to Jews. And so different sections of the city have got different houses of worship. So this is a very famous mosque inside of Jerusalem. It's known for its gold dome on top. We're facing the wrong way, so you can't actually see up on the top the crescent. It's facing this way instead of flat, so you can't see that crescent, but it is there. You can see that there's actually some construction going on in this particular picture of it, the scaffolding down here. And I really love this image, and you can see again that artwork on the outside, because the way that the gold is against this city that obviously is quite old looking, and just the way that you can sort of see how it sticks out, and it's so obvious that it's there. I believe that this is actually their minaret for this section of the city, so it's not attached to the building like the previous one we looked at, but it's still there so that during the time of prayer, somebody can be up there and calling it out with everybody. Scroll through here. So here's a picture of Mecca at night, and you can see that there are still a ton of people. Like I mentioned, millions of people make this journey every single year. And this really just gives you, this has sort of got that movement as well in the picture, and you can see everybody dressed in white and how, you know, that's definitely prevalent here. Green is an important color in Islam, and so you can see the green lights that are located here. Those are actually kind of all over Mecca, and I don't remember why it's an important color, but I remember that it's very important to them. So I wanted to show you guys, there's two different types of Muslims, two prevalent types. There's a few other ones. This is like how Christianity has got the Catholics, and even the Catholics are broken up into Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic, and there's Lutherans and there are Baptists. There's lots of different types of Christianity, but they're all Christians. There are different groups of Muslims, even though they're all still Muslims. So we have Sunnis and Shiites, and I wanted to show you guys this as a sort of the Venn diagram so that you can see there are some things that overlap, but there's some definite differences. So if we're going to look at the things that are similar, first of all, obviously they're monotheistic. They only believe in one God. They believe in the same God. So that was one of the biggest problems that Muhammad faced when he was actually starting this religion. Both groups follow the 5 pillars of Islam. Both study the Quran, which again is written in Arabic. And they also believe that in the same prophets. So prophets are people who are teaching from God. Interestingly enough, they actually believe that Abraham from Judaism and Jesus from Christianity are prophets in a long line. They believe that Muhammad is the final prophet who has arrived on the planet, but they incorporate parts of Judaism and Christianity in their teachings, which a lot of people don't know, but they do have that. So let's talk about the differences. First of all, Sunnis. The majority of Muslims are Sunnis, 90% of them. That's 940 million people in the world are Sunni Muslims. On the flip side, there's 120 million who are Shiite, so it's still a lot of people, but it's only about 10% altogether. So here's the differences. They actually are split in trying to decide who should run the religion. And this goes all the way back to Muhammad's death. So when he died in 632, his son-in-law takes over, and he is going to be the first one to be in charge after Muhammad dies. So basically, the Shiites are very purist in this, and they believe that only people who are descendants of Muhammad's daughter and son-in-law are the ones who can lead the religion. So you have to be a descendant of Ali, that was his name, or Muhammad, to be able to be in charge of the religion. On the flip side, the Sunnis feel very differently because they believe that anybody who is a good male, you got to be a male, who lives a life the way Muhammad intended, they can be in charge and they should be elected into that position. Whereas the Shiites believe if you're a descendant, that you sort of inherit that responsibility, kind of like the monarchy does. So this is a very huge difference. And one of the main reasons I want to bring that up is because in the world today, the conflict between these two groups is intense. If you have a country who is predominantly Muslim and a new leader is chosen or elected or however they do it in that country, it becomes a battle between the Sunnis and the Shiites over which person from which religion is going to be the next person in charge of their country. So again, overlapping religion and government. They do not see eye to eye with each other, and it has led to a whole lot of conflict. So there is conflict inside of the Muslim world because of that. So I found this one. I did not make this, but I do think that this is a really cool Venn diagram because it shows you the overlap for these three main world religions. I'm going to jump right into the middle and talk about the things that are similar for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because a lot of people don't realize that there's actually similarities and overlaps. So obviously all three of them are monotheistic. We mentioned that before. Abraham and Moses, very key people to all three religions. As I mentioned, they're seen as prophets for Islam, and obviously they're important in Christianity as well. Jerusalem, sacred place, holy city for all three of them. They all originated in Southwest Asia or the Middle East, and they actually all teach out of the Old Testament. So again, major overlap in all three of these religions. Now you can see that there is some other overlaps going on. So here's the Judaism and Christianity. Over here is Christianity and Islam. And then here we've got the fasting and no special training for the leaders, though that's these overlaps here. Oh, right down here, see, there's all these different ways that you can spell Quran because there's just not a good translation for us. So overall, we are going to have a very significant change in the world as this religion gets formed. And there's a lot of followers worldwide. So it is the last of our 5 world religions that we are going to be talking about, and we will definitely be referring back to them. So this chart right here actually is going to be super helpful for you in the future.